I guess the biggest change that I had in me was specifically because of the work with the kids, because they very much taught me how to be not so stressed about the final result, but rather just enjoy the process actually. We were already like joking about the fact that this interview would feel like a reflection moment, and indeed is a reflection moment.
Welcome to EM CONVERSA, a podcast of the curatorial art and research collective Maizuno Maizun. Today's episode is part of the Play the Ground conversations, where we try to dive deeper into the experiences of the artists who took part in our 2024 summer residency program. In episode 3, we are speaking with ALEKSANDRA NAYDENOVA about her experiences in the neighborhood of Talude. We talk about identity and ownership, about preserving cultural heritage in a digital format, and the challenges as well as the beauty of working with children. As always, we will let the artists just introduce themselves.
Okay. Well, hello and thank you so much for the invitation. My name is ALEKSANDRA NAYDENOVA and my background is actually in UX design, but I've always had something about social design. And that's how I actually started looking for opportunities in the area. And that's how I actually ended up here in Portugal, in Talude.
That's already an interesting part. We always ask our guests, like, how did you find out about the residency and what drew you to it?
Actually, funny enough, not per se about the residency, but I was introduced to Maizuno a year ago when they were looking for some help with their redesign of the website that they currently use. And I think at the time I was really up to helping them out, but I think availability didn't really align. My availability didn't really align with theirs. So at the time I was a bit bummed, but I still kept following their social media. And then this year I found out about the residency and I was like, okay, this is the perfect moment to actually first get introduced to Maizuno and then secondly just see what that neighborhood is about.
Okay, that's also interesting. So the first thing that drew you to it, or like the first interaction, was kind of in a different profession, like working for the website would have been a different task for you. So is like your self-conception of an artist also something that recently developed?
I wouldn't say that it recently developed, but it's always been very fluid in the sense that I've always wanted to explore different areas of design. Like I said in the beginning, I'm a user experience designer, but I've always been interested in projects that do something about communities, and that could very much take any kind of shape when it comes to design.
Okay, and what were your initial expectations when you signed up for this?
When I signed up, to be honest, I came here without any expectations. I knew that most likely I'll have a bit of trouble with the language barrier because I do not speak Portuguese. But I knew that design is a very powerful tool that could really bridge people regardless of if they speak the same language, if they come from the same country. So I knew that I'll find my way to be able to engage with the community regardless. But really, when it comes to expectations, I truly did not have any.
Yeah, I think to be honest, from what I have experienced, the people that come here with the least expectations, it's actually the best for the projects oftentimes because you need to adjust so much. I think also in your process that from the outside looking in, it seemed like even though maybe you didn't have a very close plan, you still needed to adjust the ways maybe you are not only translating in terms of language, but also what you wanted to do because you were now mostly working with children, which is totally different than working with older people. So
I was about to say that in the beginning, when I saw the sort of brief that was around the project, I definitely had this idea of, okay, the community would consist of mostly adults. And I did not expect to engage so much with the kids, but that indeed was something that I really had to adapt. But I believe that in any case, it was just a great like challenge for myself to see, okay, like if this fits adults' agenda, then how could it fit like kiddos?
yeah,
So in that way,
maybe we can actually go even deeper into that, because you came here with this idea of the zine already. And then maybe you can talk about how you had to adjust it to work for the kids then.
well, maybe we can start with what design was
Yeah.
actually about. But my concept for the project was to explore Talude and its elements, sounds, smells, shapes, and so on. Because for the people that are listening right now, Talude has a very rich history of people moving there, but also the neighborhood being very informal. And from what I understood as well, the municipality of Lisbon kind of owns the property or the area that the community is situated in right now. And they've had plans to demolish, and they've had some tries actually. So when I heard that in my head, I was like, okay, this is a place that actually has to be archived in a way, because first of all, not only because it could be demolished at any given time, but also because the people that live there, they come from very far, from Capo Verde mostly, and they have very rich cultural heritage that they carry with themselves, and that was already very much worth documenting in any shape and form.
Yeah, totally. I was able to also partake in some of your activities and also do the zine, I think, in its kind of original form. So if I understood it correctly, you had this idea of like looking at the neighborhood, finding out about it in different sensory elements, and then looking at what does this tell us about the history of Talude and its people, right?
That's right. That's right. Even though it was a bit more like informal in the sense of, okay, we didn't per se like say, okay, this house very much reminds us of Capo Verde or anything, but it was just like, okay, what could be found from the neighborhood that also in a way comes from Capo Verde or has been brought here. And to kind of go back to the previous question of like how did it actually go back from how did I adapt it from an activity for adults to an activity for kids. Well, it is incredibly easy to engage kids with exploring their neighborhood, and that was it didn't I would say it didn't take that long to actually change the the content of the zine, because it was already very clear for kids. It was just the methods that I used that were a bit more lenient, a bit more flexible. I let them go around the neighborhood. They were left for like unattended for a good 10 minutes, and then they came back to the studio, and then we discussed all of our findings.
So you said you worked with different sensory. So can you maybe explain which senses did you ask them to explore the neighborhood with, and what was like what were they bringing you, and in which form?
Well, with the smells, you cannot really like bring them, right? Like I always think about this particular moment in the activity, but when we were also having like multiple runs of like exploring the neighborhood, they were saying, "Oh, like this smells like I don't know, something that's like very musky or misty. I don't know how to per se explain it." And then I asked them, "Okay, how could you then maybe put it into words? How can you put it into a drawing?" So that was like one way of kind of connecting the smell into something that's a bit more visible, tangible in a way.
How were the smells in the neighborhood?
I must admit, like, it smelled like fresh simply because the neighborhood is very much rich in plantations, and not that I actually haven't really like smelled like how sugarcane smell like. I don't know if you've ever had that experience.
Is it kind of neutral? Like maybe after when you process it, you can have the sugar, like more tasting probably than smelling.
From what I heard, that there are many ways of processing sugar canes and making something out of it. Yeah. So that's also like one way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. There were quite some berries as well that we all smelled when the kiddos smashed them onto the paper. Mm-hmm. So that was also another moment that we had.
So you translated the smells into drawings, you said? So
very much.
Yeah.
Very much. What else?
What else? What other senses? Did you work with sound or?
We had a little sound exploration within the neighborhood, and that was also interesting. We didn't per se do it with the kids because it was just more a conversation rather than recording of sounds. But I myself and some other people like Kale, we had this informal guide around the neighborhood, and all of us were really like trying to hear all the specifics or the specific sounds of the neighborhood, like the planes flying over our head, or the wind in the sugar canes, or the wind blowing some metal part that kept like making this very loud noise. So
yeah, that's also very specific for Talude, the plains and all the the sounds of the nature, because it's like on a hill and you can kind of hear different things that you wouldn't necessarily hear here in Lisbon.
For sure.
So yeah, how did you bring all this all these experiences together in your project, or will you further develop them in the future, or?
That's a good one because like I said in the beginning, I really came with this clear idea that I want to archive the neighborhood in whatever shape it was. And there's also like one more thing that had to be mentioned, that whatever I did, it was really like in the terms and conditions of the people that were living there, because I don't want to interrupt the way that they're living. So for me, it was very important that they themselves decide what they would like to share with the world. And my plan for now is to create a website, because this is where I'm actually bringing my background in. Create a website that is consisting of the map of Talude from a previous artist that was already doing their residency last year. So we're kind of recycling that, and I'm using it to pinpoint some of the findings that the kids had, and I'll connect them in a way.
That's also very interesting for me, because I was able to be a part of the first step of archiving the experiences of the neighborhood, which were very much based on tools like clay, writing down on a paper, and then the step of digitizing or digitalizing things is something that you do in private afterwards, or?
That's right. So for me, it was very important that when I'm still here, till I was still here, I could spend a lot of activities with the kids and produce things with them, but also not see it as my own art project, but just have like a good moment for them to play, because for context, we were in the summer, and in the summer there aren't that much of activities that kids could do in the neighborhood. So it was also a great way for them to just have fun. And after we had those activities, I took pictures, and now I'm just in the process of putting them into the digital realm.
I would be also interested to, like, you coming to Lisbon and coming to Portugal. about your experience from getting from like Lisbon, the central of Lisbon. That's quite like common, and people know how it looks like, kind of, also because many tourists are here, and you kind of have this experience of Lisbon, and then going outside into Talude. How was your experiences of traveling like from the center to like Talude? Yeah.
I could say there are quite some differences that one could easily spot, but I don't know. I guess it really has to do with me not having any expectations and being like prepared in a way for everything, but also nothing. And maybe I it was definitely like a different environment to be around. First of all, because of the transportation, there are like less buses going there, but also like we talked in the beginning about the neighborhood. The neighborhood is very informal, so there were some formal structures, let's say, that were missing, like an actual road, and that is already like a big difference that I had in mind when I was thinking about the city versus the neighborhood.
And how were you like when you came there? How were you perceived like by the people? I guess you had some contacts with RMRT, and you got in touch with them, and then they maybe show you around. Or how was your first interaction with the people of the neighborhood?
With the people of the neighborhood, I think it was very important that I was actually introduced through someone else that has already been familiar, like a familiar face within the neighborhood. And the My Juno organization, like they very much helped to get me started with first the local people, like understanding, okay, this is an artist, like she doesn't want to like come to your house and I don't know, be mean to you in a way or anything or interrupt you, but it's more that she's having like her project and it's about you and it's about the kids as well, so you should come see her, say hi and so on. But one particular moment was that there was a girl, her name is Anna, she's originally from the neighborhood, and as I mentioned before, I struggled very much with the translation. So I got introduced to her in one of the other activities from another artist before me in Talude, and I just simply asked her if she would be up to actually helping me in my activities, and she was very much facilitating most of them, which I'm extremely grateful about.
Maybe also because you already talked about the struggle of translating, which in some cases maybe then was resolved by, for example, Anna. But of course, we don't only want to share success stories. So maybe you can also tell us about things you struggled with and that didn't go well, or just any kind of struggles you had with infrastructure or, yeah, anything really.
My struggles, okay. I guess it's very different to work with adults than with kids. And I wouldn't say that I had the best personal preparation before like coming here and working with kids. So definitely there were moments where keeping kids' attention was like the biggest challenge for me. Because you don't want to per se interrupt them in the way that they're playing, in the way that they're interacting with each other, but at the same time you're very much you're following a schedule after all, and you don't want to tire them too much. You don't want to like spend too much time with them and make them bored. So I had to very much juggle with the time I had with them and the activities that I had in mind. So that was definitely like my biggest struggle, and in any other way, I don't know, like everything was manageable.
Yeah, but I think it's actually a very important point and something that a lot of artists at least seem to struggle with, because especially in the neighborhoods that we are working in right now, oftentimes it is a lot easier to get to children because adults just oftentimes have to work, or maybe there's also a mistrust or more of a mistrust towards outsiders, which is also very understandable in some cases, I think. But maybe you can also try to explain how you still try to get your ideas of like cultural heritage, identity, and maybe ownership, like all these words that I think as concepts mean something to you. How were you able to translate them into activities for the children that were then able to, without understanding the concepts, maybe in terms of the words themselves, how they were able to live them through the activities?
Yeah. It's a good one because when I was personally having like a tour around the neighborhood, one thing really stuck with me, and that was the fact that there were quite some kids that never really shared outside of their neighborhood where they actually came from or where they were living, and they were very much ashamed of being part of Talude. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that shouldn't be the case, like just understanding how much of travel these families must have gone through just to come here. That's already like a lot of things to like process. So one thing that I very much wanted to focus on was just the understanding of, hey, you have like this awesome neighborhood with so many things, like so many already like established spaces that other people would like pay money for, or other people would like really love to live there, and you have this opportunity, so you should cherish it as well. And I was just through my activities also trying to pinpoint, okay, you have all these places, and all these places are actually such a great thing because I come from another country and my environment is way different, and I'm missing on those things. So in that way, through conversations, we kind of touched upon these topics that were way bigger for kids to comprehend, but we try to make it a bit more simple.
Yeah, it brings us also like to the topic of informality, that it's quite like kind of like Talude is kind of informal, but also like the question of what our perception as an outsider, as an artist, is when we go to Talude, of this informality that we perceive as something kind of good, or like not something that we see so many things that happening there that are kind of you're surprised, you are seeing how people manage to live their lives and build up their own things, and then the informality perceived by the people because of like a necessity, they have to live this way, and it's not necessarily something they want to have. So kind of, I don't know, the question would be, how do you see this kind of shift of informality in Talude? Do they, I mean, they also are kind of proud of their houses, of course, probably. And how are like, especially like the kids, if you say they are not like proud to be from there, like they don't like to tell that. How do you think this project could like contribute to like kind of finding like a sense of belonging or identity in this neighborhood? Or is it like something you want to have, or is it more, I mean, you probably will not control it at the end, but
I think it's a very difficult task to actually like do that, in the sense that, first of all, the informality itself, like that is a very difficult like topic to talk about. I mean, as it's like a thing we don't probably have the answer to. No,
it's
no,
more,
no.
You.
Also, I think it's important to mention that, like, us as outsiders, of course, the idea of us coming in and changing something also is like maybe weird, or not necessarily weird, but like we have to know the limits of like, okay, that the most important task is probably asking, okay, like, how do you live, how do you want to live, what are your dreams, visions for the neighborhood, and all of these things. And then I think, yeah, I don't know, the role of being an outsider plays like a big role in doing these residencies.
For sure, I can definitely agree with Kale. And one more thing that I could say is that indeed, as an outsider, the only thing that you can do is really like bring a new, fresh pair of eyes to them, and really just have a conversation about what would they like to see in the neighborhood. And the one thing that I was trying to do was I didn't want to per se change the neighborhood in the sense of I could have offered them a way to have a conversation about like what has to be changed, what do they need, and so on. What is the vision for the neighborhood as well. But what I really wanted to do with my project was to just take the present moment and be like, okay, this is what you have. Just cherish it, just appreciate it, because it's already very unique than any other place in around. So you might as well just have it somewhere. Just have like a little memorabilia out of it, even if it's in a web version.
Yeah, also with this idea of ownership, as you said, like the land isn't owned by the people, so perhaps it's also about owning the history of the place, not only owning the materiality, but like all of the stories that come with it. And maybe that's a part where you can help by preserving the stories, preserving what matters to the people.
Definitely. And the very much the way that I try to, as you said, like I first started with the idea of having discussions, but through discussions there were, of course, coming a lot of stories about like how certain like elements in the neighborhood came all the way from Cabo Verde to here in Portugal. And I figured out that objects actually have quite a good spot in the world to tell stories. And with one of the activities, we made clay figures with the kids, and I asked them to just create something that they could find in Talude, something that reminds them of Talude. And through making the figures at the end when we were presenting them, most of the kids already had a good story about why they chose to make, I don't know, for instance, like a sugar cane or a cat, or there were some elements as well of like bricks that were very much somehow in their head as, okay, this was something that was really part of our neighborhood, and maybe they've been part of the building of their house as well, because most of the times that's what happens when a family wants to provide or like sustain themselves in the neighborhood, that maybe they have to build something extra for their family.
Yeah. So now we talked a lot about how you as an artist coming to the neighborhood maybe changed the neighborhood or the people in it, but of course it's a two-sided process. What would you say, how were you changed by this experience, and what will you take into future artwork or work in general?
I guess the biggest change that I had in me was specifically because of the work with the kids, because like I said, like I haven't really been exposed to working with kids, so when I had to do all those activities with them, they very much taught me how to, I don't know, be not so stressed about the final result, but rather just enjoy the just enjoy the process, actually. Like I've always tried to do that myself, and somehow, because of many reasons actually, I've only focused on the final product, and that has always been like the main focus. But through working with kids, this was something that would really stick with me, that one should definitely just enjoy the process and really just look forward to it rather than the final product.
This is probably also a very difficult question, but for you working alone, then how might this look? Like, how can you enjoy the process more for yourself?
I would say just enjoy the mundane things that you do in your work. I feel like I already kind of started doing that because the other day I had around 400 pictures of all the figures and the guides that we made with the kids. I had to digitalize them, and that is essentially like a lot of boring thing that you do behind your laptop. But I was just like looking at all the little details and I was like, oh, but you know what, like this is actually also fun, you know, like 400 pictures, it's not too bad.
It's very nice that you see also this this residency and the process. Like, it's also nice to document the process and to have the process kind of as the results of the residency. I feel like this booklet is also like something work in progress. It could also like evolve more, or like you can always take it again and see completely different things in it. So I think that's very valuable that that it's not like about. I mean, it depends what your goal is, but not about having like a final product. Maybe this will be the website also, but also that can be still change. I
very much agree with that because I believe in the recycling materials, design materials in particular. And as we talked slightly earlier, specifically about the guides, because they very much make you explore your surrounding in different ways that you wouldn't per se like have in mind when you go to a new place. So the guide that I created for Talude specifically, it's not only for Talude. It could be very much used in any other place. So it could definitely be applied in many places and could have also different shapes if it's needed.
Maybe that's also interesting because you were talking about some of the kids maybe not seeing what great structures had already developed in Talude from your perspective. But I think for me it was the same when I did it. I realized, oh, I want to do this where I live and see how I can try to appreciate more where I live and what actually exists there, like this process of also through different senses looking at, okay, how does my neighborhood smell? How are the structures in it? What do they do with me? I think, as you said, can be applied to basically every territory there is.
Very much. And I guess in that way, just figuring out what's there could also prompt you to think, okay, where do I want to bring my neighborhood? What do I want to see from it? Like, in that sense, just by appreciating what's there already and seeing where you would like to have it further developed, that's already like a big goal or a big thing to have.
Yeah, also the thing that these sensory experiences of a place, usually in any mapping or in any documenting of a place, usually are a little bit less important, or like they are just left out. So I think it's also like it's like an artistic project, but it's also like a thing that we should take into consideration when we go to a place, how these senses play a role into our perception of the place, and not just, okay, this is like an informal settlement and that's like the status of it, but it's a place where you can smell like you can hear the wind, you can hear the airplanes, you can smell different things. Each day is different, so and yeah, it's a very individual experience too.
For sure.
How you can go there.
For sure. Now I'm even myself inspired to actually, like how Kalle said, like just go to my neighborhood in the Netherlands and be like, oh, okay, what is there? What can I find? What have I missed in the past, I don't know, a year or two that I've been living in there?
I think to be honest, maybe we're already approaching the end. I know it's still a difficult question, but perhaps now you have something that, like one experience that comes up to you that can be obviously also very mundane, but just something that maybe you will remember in 2 years still from this experience.
From the residency. Yeah, I swear I have to think. We were already.
We have time. Yeah, we can cut everything out.
We were already like joking about the fact that this interview would feel like a reflection moment, and indeed is a reflection moment. But it takes a bit of time to see what would really stick with you. But I don't know. I feel like for me it was everything really. Like as you said, like it's not per se like a bigger event that happened, but it was just all those little things of. Just like learning how to, I don't know, approach kids and make them feel comfortable in your presence, because I'm an outsider. I'm clearly an outsider for them that doesn't even speak their own language. So that's already like a big mistrust that could like bring in people. So finding a way to still be present with them, still be respected, and like have the kids being interested in whatever you're to do with them, it's already like a big thing that I'll definitely take with me.
Yeah, I mean, we also have to say you just finished your residency yesterday, so
That's
it's
right.
all quite fresh still.
That's right.
And
Good excuse.
It's also a lot of things to process, also for yourself, for you personally, for your artwork, and all the experience that you had during your time here. So I think, I think it's also good to reflect also in a later time about what was okay, what was maybe going good, what can you learn from this experience. And as you said, working with kids is challenging. It's very something, you also have the experience, and I think also the kids will take this experience for you coming there and doing these activities with you.
Even just simply, being entertained for 3 weeks, that's already like a big plus for them.
That's true too.
Yeah. And also one thing that just came up in my mind is, I think in a way it's funny to think that there might initially be this perception that the biggest difference from, let's say, the Netherlands where you live right now, or even central Lisbon, to going to a different neighborhood on the outskirts might be like, it's informal, they build their own houses, whatever. But then in the end, it's just talking to adults or talking to kids, or it's having the smell of sugarcane or having the smell of trash laying around in the street. So it's sometimes things that maybe we don't expect that much when we come to the residency that actually become the most important factors in the work. Basically.
And I know now that you say that, I must admit, like in my head, it was never like that big of a difference, It was just the difference of people and finding like ways to speak with the people. That was mostly it.
I think it's also a nice last word. Yeah. Thank you so much for participating in this
Thank you so much
podcast
for having
conversation. Me. And of course, also thank you for doing the residency.
Thank you so much as well.
Thank you.